There's a question most people get asked as children: what do you need? But if you grew up too fast, nobody asked you that. Instead, they needed you to be quiet, to be easy, to hold it together when they couldn't. And somewhere along the way, you stopped knowing how to answer that question. Because your needs weren't the point, theirs were. This is how a childhood disappears. Not in one moment, in 1,000 small erasures. Every time you swallowed your feelings to keep the peace. Every time you made yourself smaller so they could be bigger. Every time you became the adult so they could fall apart. People assume that children who take on responsibility early are just naturally mature. Old souls, born leaders, exceptionally responsible. But that's rarely the truth. Sometimes, what looks like maturity is a child's nervous system adapting to survive an environment that requires it. Psychologists call this parentification. It happens when the roles reverse, when a child becomes the emotional caretaker for the adults who should be taking care of them. Dr. Gregory Yurkovich, who studied this for decades, discovered something crucial. These children don't just take on extra chores or responsibilities. They absorb the emotional temperature of the entire household. They become the thermostat, always adjusting, always regulating. This isn't building character, it's rewiring a developing brain. What if early responsibility wasn't a gift? What if it was a theft? When you become the stable one before you're 10, something happens in your body. Your nervous system learns to stay in a constant state of alert. You develop a sixth sense for emotional danger. You can walk into a room and immediately know who's upset, what's wrong, what needs to be managed. This isn't intuition, it's hypervigilance. Your body learns to scan for threats that aren't physical but emotional. A shift in tone, a tightness around someone's eyes, the particular silence that means something's wrong. You become fluent in a language most children never have to learn. The language of other people's needs, and in the process, you forget how to speak your own. This doesn't happen because parents are monsters. Often it happens because they're overwhelmed. Maybe it's a single parent working multiple jobs, so exhausted they have nothing left to give. Maybe it's parents going through divorce, so consumed by their own pain they can't see yours. Maybe it's mental illness, depression that turns a parent into a shell. Anxiety that makes them collapse into you for comfort. Maybe it's addiction, grief, financial stress, chronic illness. The specifics don't matter as much as the pattern. What matters is that somewhere along the way you learned a devastating lesson. Your feelings make things worse. Your needs are a burden. Being easy is how you earn love. So you become the child who never complains, who always understands, who says I'm fine even when you're breaking inside. And the adults around you, desperate for one thing to be easy, let you. They believe the performance because it's easier than seeing the truth. Here's what researchers at Johns Hopkins University found. Children in parentified roles show measurably different brain development patterns, specifically in areas related to emotional regulation and stress response. Their amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, becomes overactive. Even in safe situations, their bodies remain prepared for crisis. This isn't a disorder, it's an adaptation, because for thousands of years, children who could read danger and respond appropriately had better survival odds. Your brain did exactly what evolution designed it to do. It made you useful, alert, indispensable. The problem is your nervous system doesn't know the crisis is over, so it keeps running the same program decades later. We live in a culture that celebrates this without naming the cost. The independent child, the self-sufficient one, the kid who has it together. But nobody talks about what happens when that child grows up. You become the friend everyone calls in a crisis but never asks how you're doing. You become the partner who manages everything, fixes everything, anticipates everything, and then wonders why you feel so alone. You become the co-worker who never says no, never sets boundaries, never admits when you're drowning. Because somewhere deep in your nervous system, being needed still feels like the only way to be loved, and not being needed feels like abandonment. There's a particular exhaustion that comes with this, not physical tiredness, soul tiredness, the exhaustion of performing stability when you feel anything but stable, of holding space for everyone else's emotions while having nowhere to put your own, of being the strong one, the reliable one, the one who always has answers, when inside you're still that child asking, "When does someone take care of me?" People see your competence and assume you're fine. They lean on you because you seem unbreakable. But what they don't see is how much energy it takes to appear that way. How you've been running on empty for so long, you've forgotten what full feels like. Behind every "I've got this" is a child still waiting for someone to say, "You don't have to." Not resentment toward others. Grief for yourself, not strength. Survival, not independence. Self-protection, not maturity. Unmet need. Maybe healing doesn't begin with learning to set boundaries. Maybe it begins with understanding why you never learned you were allowed to have them. Your inability to say no isn't a character flaw. It's a survival pattern from a time when saying no felt dangerous. When your value was determined by how useful you were. When disappointing someone could mean losing the little safety you had. There's something that changes when you stop treating your hyper-responsibility as a virtue. When you start asking, "What was I protecting myself from?" The answer is usually heartbreaking. You were protecting yourself from being too much, from being a burden, from the terror of needing someone and finding nothing there. So you learned to need no one. You became your own parent, your own comfort, your own source of stability. And now you're an adult who knows how to give endlessly but has no idea how to receive. Who knows how to be strong but not how to be soft? Who knows how to survive but not how to rest? What if you could go back to that child, not to fix them, to witness them, to say what nobody said then? "You shouldn't have had to do this. You were just a kid. Their problems weren't yours to solve. Their emotions weren't yours to manage." Healing isn't about learning to be more independent. You're already too independent. It's about learning that connection doesn't require constant usefulness, that you can be loved without performing, that you can have needs without being needy, that sometimes the bravest thing isn't holding it together, it's finally letting yourself fall apart. The child who learned to manage everyone's emotions is still inside you. Still scanning rooms for danger, still making themselves small and easy, still believing that if they stop being helpful, they'll stop being wanted. But here's what that child needs to know. You don't have to earn your place anymore. You can stop performing. Not all at once, not perfectly, but in small moments you can practice something radical. Being honest about what you feel, saying "I'm not okay" without immediately fixing it. Asking for help without apologizing for needing it. Resting without justifying why you deserve it. These will feel wrong at first. Selfish, weak, dangerous. That's the old programming resisting change. So when you catch yourself overextending again, taking on problems that aren't yours, managing emotions you didn't create, pause. Not to judge yourself, to notice. You're not broken for doing this. You're running software written when you were 7 years old. Software that once kept you safe. But safety looks different now, and the program can be updated. There will still be days when you slip back into old patterns, when you say yes when you mean no, when you carry everything alone, when you make yourself easy instead of honest. That's being human, not failure. But there will also come a day when someone asks, "What do you need?" And you'll actually answer. When someone offers help and you won't immediately refuse. When you'll cry in front of someone and not apologize. When you'll rest without guilt eating you alive. And all those years of being strong will finally make sense. Not because they made you better, but because they taught you what you never want another child to learn. You were forced to be an adult when you should have been learning to be a child. But healing gives you something unexpected. The chance to parent yourself the way you needed to be parented then. With patience, with gentleness, with unconditional presence. Not to erase what happened, but to stop repeating it. Not through perfection, through compassion. Not alone, through connection. Not by becoming someone new, by remembering you were always enough. You never got asked what you needed. So I'm asking now, what do you need? Not what everyone else needs from you. What do you need? You don't have to answer right away. You can sit with that question, maybe for the first time in your life. And whatever the answer is, it matters. You matter. Not because of what you do, but because of who you are as human.